This is Comcast Local Edition. I'm Jack Hansen. We're on the USS Hornet. We're anchored here in Alameda, permanently anchored. It is a museum that you can visit at any time, of course, celebrating Splashdown, the recovery of Apollo 11. And with me is a gentleman who was involved in that because he was a special assistant and aide to President Richard Nixon, who came aboard after the astronauts landed. Nice to have you here, Dick.
Jack, great to be here.
Dick Powers. Did I even say your name? I probably let it slip right by me.
No, you got it right.
The third. I got it all in there. Dick, how did that proceed? What happened? They came to you and he said, President Nixon needs someone who's intelligent and can lead him around and knows the ship, right?
Well, it was funny because to this day, I even asked Captain Cyber last night. I never quite understood how I got picked, and it's a mystery to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it had anything to do with my intelligence.
Well, it must have something to do with something, right? Anyway, so they said, what, go be with the president when he comes aboard, greet him when he gets on the ship?
The president is coming on board for 3 to 4 hours and would like you to spend the entire time with him to make sure that anything he needs, and if there's any issues with the ship, that you be the interface between the ship and the president's entourage.
Yeah. What was the meeting like for the first time?
I was totally mystified. I was 23 at the time, and from Long Island, and I had never met anyone important in my life. Never won any famous, no one important, and here I was going to meet the president and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And so just before he came into the room where I was going to meet him, I got really nervous, and when he walked in, I totally froze.
Really?
And he looked at me, and he stuck his hand out and said, I'm President Nixon.
Yeah.
What's your name, Lieutenant, and where are you from? And I forgot my name, and I forgot from where I was from.
I've done that here, actually.
So that's how it went.
Yeah.
But after that, he was gracious. He was absolutely excited.
He must have been thrilled.
He was totally exuberant. He was elated. And this was a huge deal for him because he was just, 9 months into his, less than 9 months into the new presidency. And this was a huge event for our country.
Yeah.
So
for the world. I mean, it was a mankind kind of thing. It's bigger than big,
Richard Nixon said it when he went down and spoke to the astronauts, and as I mentioned to you before, to put it in perspective, he said Apollo 11 is the greatest week in the history of the world since creation. That's pretty big.
That's as big as it gets.
That's as big as it gets.
That's right. So what happened? He went up, and we've seen film of him through the looking glass MQ at the recovery area, and he talked to the astronauts.
Yes, well, interestingly, Jack, the first point is he spent almost his entire 3 hours up on the flag bridge. He stayed away from the crew and the television, and I remember the press at the time wondering why he was doing this, but he did it because he wanted the focus to be on the astronauts and on them, and he didn't want to disrupt the crew, didn't want to disrupt NASA, but mostly it was all about focusing on the astronauts. So he spent very little time actually coming down. If he spent 10 minutes with the astronauts and left, it was a lot.
And that was it.
And that was it.
And that was it. And what was the impression he left you with?
He was just amazingly presidential in his carry. When I met him, he was tan. He had a perfectly pressed suit. He had a white starch collar, not a hair out of it. He was everything you would expect a president to be. But when you got to know him, he was very down to earth and very, very approachable.
Yeah. What an experience for a 23-year-old to be involved, not only meeting the president like that, but also in meeting the people who just came back from the moon, of all places. Right?
Well, I would say this, that at 23, I learned the meaning of excellence. And I learned it here that day, watching NASA and how the ship performed picking up the astronauts.
Did you have a chance to see the astronauts when they came back? I know they were in quarantine.
Well, they were in quarantine, so basically I saw them as they transited. They came down on the elevator and went right to the quarantine facility. So I saw them there briefly, and then from time to time they'd open the curtain and you'd see them. But they were pretty much isolated. They wanted their space, and we sort of left them alone.
You had your time, though, right?
And I had my time and my day.
Nice to see you, Dick. It's Comcast Local Edition. I'm Jack Hansen. We're on the USS Hornet. Thanks for watching.